Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Joel and Adam for a late night horror express. And again, the late night versions of this show are way different than the normal ones because it's well after midnight. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning, and me and Adam are old men, and so we start to get loopy around this time. Joel's in another time zone, so he's a little less affected by this. So he's probably going to be the more clear-headed person. But these are just a more surreal and meandering approach to the show. You know, if you don't expect cogency and coherence here. So
don't
tonight,
worry, Brennan. Their expectations have already been prelowered.
Okay, I've dropped them. So, anyways, tonight we're doing Saw. We're doing the first three Saw movies. I don't think I need to introduce these films. Everybody knows what they are. There's what are there, 9 Saw movies at this point? I don't know the exact. Yeah. I actually did watch all of them leading up to this podcast, but this week I rewatched just the first 3 because those are the ones that we're focusing on. But a couple of weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I watched all of them back to back. And so there's quite a few of them. I think the first one came out in 2004 and was directed by James Wan, and the second and the third one, I think, who directed the third one? It was Darren Lynn directed the second one, I believe. But I don't.
I think he and Juan wrote the third one together, if I recall.
Okay, I think the first 3, I think it's the story. The story was by James Wan and Leigh Whannell. In the third one, and I think Leigh Whannell is the through line for the first 3 movies in terms of the script. Mm-hmm. And you notice that the fourth movie, it does I can definitely see a shift after the third film. But anyways, we've already started our meandering, so why don't we get into the movie? And I don't know, Adam, what was your I think me and Joel have kind of talked about these films a little bit, but I don't really know what your response is because I didn't get the impression that you really particularly had as much interest in them. And so
I've never seen them before.
Okay,
really? Whoa, holy crap, dude!
I wasn't a huge Saw person either, so I mean I'm in a similar camp to Adam. But
you guys sucks. I loved Saw when I was a kid. So.
Well, I was in my 30s when the first Saw movie came out. So yeah, I definitely would have seen them all if I was younger. But they were getting pretty scary for me. But I don't know. My main feeling was I just expected more of the funny little puppet man, and there wasn't a whole lot of the funny little puppet man in the movie. I felt betrayed kind of watching these.
Was it did Scary Movie lead you to believe that? Because I feel like Scary Movie has shaped a lot of people's impression.
I have never seen Scary Movie or any Scary Movie related product.
Okay.
Oh, God, you suck. Scary Movie's funny too.
We're gonna have to.
I haven't seen it. It wasn't a condemnation. I just haven't seen it.
Oh, yes, it is. We all know the case.
At some point, we'll have to do a Scary Movie discussion, but my wife loves those movies, so I've had to, every time a Scary movie came out, we had to go see it in the theater. But yeah, so I'm sorry, Adam, continue because we've been interrupting as you've been talking.
These are weird movies. I mean, it's strange to me that it is strange to me that these were really popular movies too, because they are just. I don't know. They just the kind of universe they take place in is so strange, and the characters are. I feel like every character in this is like an extra from a cop show or a hospital show or something. So it's like these characters from really mundane entertainment have wandered into someone's weird, strange fan fiction universe. I don't know. I'm still kind of processing. I only watched 3 tonight, so I'm still kind of got these rolling around in my head. But yeah, they are very unusual. I'm not sure how I feel, but I'm glad I watched them. They're definitely interesting. But I'll provide more thoughts later. How did you feel about the Brent?
I'm not sure how I feel. It's such an interesting sentiment.
I mean, I think so I really enjoyed doing the marathon of Saw movies. And watching these once again, I enjoyed doing that. I find the movies entertaining, but like you, I wasn't that into them. Like the first one came out, and I think I saw it. I have memories, like a lot of the stuff that happened in the movie I remember. So I think I saw it with my wife on TV or something. And my sister was really into the Saw movies, so I remember parts of part two. And I think it's because she was watching it and I was in the room. And I distinctly remember the ending of part three. And I remember it being one of those scenes where I was like, that's very interesting. Like that scene at the very end was very interesting to me. And I was very intrigued by the Jigsaw character. Yeah. And I thought about him a lot after that, but I never really cared enough to watch, the Saw movies or, go and see the rest of the franchise. Yeah. But after I had said something to Joel a few podcasts ago about Saw being really gruesome, and he said, no, it's actually not. You need to go see them again. And I was like, you know what? Like I had just done like a Final Destination marathon for myself. So I'm like, I'm going to cap this off with a Saw marathon. Yeah. And I really enjoyed it. I think I had kind of a sneering attitude towards the Saw movies because I think like you, Adam, I was coming out of the 90s and the 80s, and I had like a sense of like Saw is such a direct contrast to the horror that I think you and I grew up on. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's
totally like, different. Yeah.
And we had our version of Saw was like Friday the 13th. That was sort of the
I totally, and I see, like I say, it's weird. When I say it, I was kind of surprised they were popular, but at the same time, I totally get why these were really popular horror movies. It's pretty clear to me.
But when Saw came out, I remember it feeling almost like an affront to me. Do you know what I mean? Like that's like, and I did, and again,
they were just kind of off my radar. It wasn't like I even rejected them. I just really I was like living in the city at the time. I was like socializing a lot. I was out every night, and I just wasn't paying a whole lot of attention to what was in the theater. So I just kind of.
I mean, I was going to the theater like this came out in 2004, so that was like when I was dating my wife, and I was going to the theater like every freaking weekend to see something. So. Yeah. It's possible I don't think we would have seen Saw in the theater, but I know that I saw like trailers for it, and I just remember feeling like this is, I don't know. I don't even remember what it was about it that bothered me, but something
it definitely has a really strong aesthetic of the time, I have to say. It was kind of funny. It's funny watching it for the first time now, because I'm like, wow, this really feels like 2003 to me.
It's got a real Korn music video vibe.
Yes. There's a very new metal, a very Nine Inch Nails industrial quality to it. It's like it's kind of like a Marilyn Manson music video.
Or like Insane Clown Posse, or someone like that. Like of the time,
Yeah, like the doll. Even I was like, that doll is definitely got to be modeled after Marilyn Manson. That feels like it was modeled after Marilyn Manson. But I mean, it's a really fun movie. Also, I remember hearing an interview with what's his name, Tobin, the guy who plays Jigsaw.
What is that guy's name? It is like Tobin or something like
Tobin
that.
Bell. Tobin Bell.
That's right.
Bell. Oh man.
So he was on a show here called Toucher and Rich. It's a radio show, and they did this little bit where they had him on, and I didn't know he was the guy in Saw until they mentioned it, but they had a guy on the show who's kind of a doofus named Adolphus. And the bit was he was going to read a line of dialogue, and then they were going to have Tobin Bell read the same line of dialogue to show the difference between a non-actor and a real actor. And so the line was, how'd your sister die? And so Adolfo goes, how'd your sister die? And Tobin Bell gets the script, and he says, do I have to keep the contraction? And that immediately captured my attention. I was like, oh, why is he saying that? And so he read it, and he goes, how did your sister die? And he did it much better than I just did. But that emphasis on the did, it just added all of this meaning to the line, and so I immediately became interested in this guy as an actor. Do you know what I mean? And
He's,
so
he's
really
good.
murders his role. He's perfect for it.
Yeah,
and I think that's the thing that's good about I think he is the thing that makes the movie so good.
Yeah, if you had someone who wasn't that good in the Jigsaw role, these movies would just kind of fall apart, I think.
You come for the puppet, you stay for the dying old man.
Yeah, it's
and so I think also my other reaction is the first movie is way better than I remember. The first movie is like a really good horror movie.
Yeah, it's solid.
Yeah, it was.
I actually staved off watching any of the sequels because of how much respect I had for the first movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the first movie does a great job of keeping these two characters in a room, and then the only escape you have from that room are the flashbacks. And the flashbacks, because they're flashbacks,
and the police investigation too.
The police investigation during.
Oh wait, actually, that's a flashback, isn't it? Yeah, never mind.
Well, no, they cut because we get to see his wife and daughter.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, that's right.
So they have a little bit of a break, but it's still connected. Like it's all laser focused into that room.
Yeah, honestly, I did feel like they could have spent more time in the room. It's like I feel like they could have built up a little more tension. Like I feel like they kind of cut away from the room more than they should have, but it still works. But that's
I think
my decision.
But my feeling too is because they were cutting away to things that were largely uncomfortable, or were flashbacks that were very hazy and just kind of it didn't make you feel like you were escaping the room.
But
that's one of the strengths, I think, because you're right. Like that kind of helps build up some of the tension of their current situation when you see the outcome of the other Jigsaw deaths, and there aren't a lot of deaths in this movie that happen in that prime timeline. Yeah. So you kind of have to. You still need to get your kills in as a schlocky horror movie, and that's how they did it. They did it in flashbacks.
Good point. It's a good point.
And I have to say, Joel was correct. The first movie is not that gruesome. I mean, there's
a few pretty tense scenes. Like there's the guy that like kills himself, like cut himself up through barbed wire and stuff like that. Yeah. But again, you just don't see a lot of gore. There's a lot of implied horror, even when you're looking right at the torture going on. Not a lot of blood gushing everywhere. Not a lot of organs. They tell you that they cut so deep that they got stomach acid. They don't really show you, though. And the fact that they don't show you and they play it in that kind of jerky fast forward, it makes it seem a lot more intense than it really is. I like that. And it's a clever little technique, and they do it a lot in that movie. Maybe a little too much, but whatever. I wasn't a huge fan of and they keep this with the whole series, at least the first three movies, where they do we're doing normal motion, then we're doing really intense fast forward flashbacks.
Yeah. Which is what gives it that like Nine Inch Nails 90s new metal sort of, and I know Nine Inch Nails isn't new metal, but just that aesthetic.
We'll have to get into that discussion at some other point, but but yeah, it's an aesthetic that is very there's a modern phrase for it.
It's like muddy. It's
like a pick me. It's almost like they're begging to be taken seriously. Like we demand to be taken seriously.
Oh, okay.
That's what's going on with that. And it's a real try hard. It's a try hard thing.
There's too much language to describe things now. Like there's everything has a pejorative that you can affix to it.
It's the most old man sentence I've ever heard, Brendan.
There's just too much language in the world. There's too many words.
How dare you use neologisms?
but also, you know what it made that central room. What it reminded me of was the bathroom in public school. That's what it reminded me of. I think that's what they were going for. I think they wanted you to feel that same sense of entrapment you felt as a kid going to school. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so, but I like that. I also, the other interesting thing about this movie is Gary Elways is in it, and this was kind of an odd point in his career. And and obviously he had done Dracula and stuff, but he's generally, I find, more suited to lighter-hearted material, and so it was interesting to see him in this movie. And also, I got the impression that this was kind of like at I could be wrong, but I always even when the trailer came out, I remember thinking this felt like the low point of his career, and this was maybe like his John Travolta moment in terms of like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, kind of making a bit of a comeback.
I don't think anyone thought Saw was going to be the huge hit that it was.
Yeah.
Well, and he comes back to the series later, doesn't he? Like, doesn't he come back in? Yeah. So I mean, like, it became a hit and it actually seemed to rebound his career a little bit. So that's cool. He's in Stranger Things and things like that now. It's good to see. I like Harry Elwes. I kind of always wish he had more work.
Yeah, it was good in this too.
And they
someone's a little off, but.
Well, there's a lot of actors in this movie that are not American, that are faking American accents, like Gary Elwes. So I think that's also like another. I don't know. It's kind of got like gives it almost like a Walking Dead kind of feel because there are these I don't know when you bring in that kind of actor to a movie like this, it's a different effect. And it's obviously not all English actors, but the other guy Hoffman in the later films I think is Scottish. Do you know what I mean? So it's just there's a couple of other people too. I can't remember. I was looking people up as we were watching it. The guy in the third movie, Jeff, the guy whose son was killed by the drunk driver. He was from Braveheart. And he's a Scottish actor. He was in the movie Braveheart.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, you never know he was Scottish, huh? He actually does a really good job. Yeah, Elwes doesn't do a super convincing job doing an American accent.
No, Elwes, you could hear it. It's
a little too growly. Yeah. He's like really fighting his Britishness. That's an uphill battle, man. He does a good job now. He's like an American in Stranger Things, and he sounds totally fine. Again, I didn't realize it was him at first.
It worked with him being a doctor because doctors kind of speak in that higher level of English.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
yeah, why not just let him have his accent though?
That's what I always think.
I always think that too. I'm like, I feel like Americans watch so much British TV now. Like in the 80s, you would have all these Americans who had trouble. I can't understand the people in this show. It's like, I don't think that's even an issue anymore. It's
man, Americans are dumb. I will say though, like working here in the hotel industry, actually hearing accents like from places like England and Australia, it's always like a shock to me. I'm like, wow, they really sound like that. It's like going to a zoo to me. Like that's how Midwestern I am. Sorry, people of other cultures.
I just don't think. Well, I mean, maybe what they were worried about is. Well, here's a question: which character did you identify with most in the first Saw movie between the two of them?
Oh man, it's got to be Elwes. Like he's as troubled as he is. He's the most heroic character, so I want to be that guy.
Adam, how about you?
I feel like the reporter was a fink.
I didn't really relate. I mean, because I enjoyed the movie, but it wasn't a movie that really kind of pulled me into rooting for it. I was kind of watching.
I relate to the puppet.
Who did you sympathize with?
Exactly. I was just, where's the puppet? That was just all I was thinking in every scene.
Who did you have more sympathy for, though? I guess would be the question. Like, which one were you? Like, or did you
Team
just
Edward
not
or Team
care
Jacob,
equally?
man? Come on, make a choice.
Yeah. It's a lot of pressure.
Well, I mean, if you didn't, you can also just say
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't really rooting for either of the two characters. I was just impassively, coldly, in a reptilian fashion, wondering which of them was going to die.
I think that means you identify with Saw.
I
think Tobin Bell had this one right.
It's turning out to be a very
Zepp,
dark
or Zepp
podcast
possibly as well.
Or who?
Or Zepp, the guy that was running things for Saw on the first side.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he kind of had like that reptilian vibe going. Do you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I don't know. I kind of was going back and forth because there were times when I was like, I don't know, the Adam character reminded me of like being a delivery driver. Do you know what I mean? Like that's like he kind of had that vibe to him.
Yeah.
He was like a photographer, but it reminded me of my delivery driver days, and I really couldn't. I don't know. I felt like Elwes being a doctor, that kind of automatically put a little more distance between me and him. And the reason why I asked the question is because I was thinking, I wonder if one of the reasons why they didn't have Elwes do the accent was because they were worried it would create more distance between him and the audience.
That makes sense, actually. Yeah.
Because I mean,
they knew that their audience was a bunch of schlubs like us.
Well,
oh, he's talking all fancy. I want him to die.
Well, not that, but I mean, like, the English accent has like it's probably less so now, but like it used to be the accent for villains in movies, right? So, like,
God, you're right.
Yeah. So, it just indicates it used to convey like arrogance and or being, upper class or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So
the Americans love hating the British. That's the thing we love doing.
Well, I think now we're just feigning it. I don't think there's any real.
Nobody can hate the British. Come on.
But
so adorable.
But so my other thought about this movie and the rest of the franchise actually is I think one of its strengths is that it's built on really well constructed flashback sequences that like individually tell kind of a complete story. Do you know what I mean?
Like a jigsaw.
And you can,
puzzle.
I think as it goes on, that gets a little bit less the case. So, huh?
Like a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah,
I know,
I
right?
Guess, yeah.
Because each movie's a little puzzle. Come on,
and
that's clever.
They do. No, that's actually valid, especially as you get into like the later movies and they really start doing that.
And you realize the franchise is an ever expanding super jigsaw. You're like, oh god.
The jigsaw piece isn't a clue. It's just an indication that a piece is missing from this person. So
like Adam, you know how like in like one of the things they start doing by the second and third movie is they start to recontextualize things that happened in the prior movies. Yeah. That is once you get to part 4, that's all the series is just recontextualization of it does it really well. Like they know what they are and they do it well, but it's kind of like how the series is sustained at that point.
After 4, because I've watched a lot. I don't know if I watched all of them, but I watched a ton of them. And after 4, I got lost. I'm like, okay, wait, that meant like 5 different things in 3 different movies.
Well, because they start like everything starts happening at like this actually was happening the day that Saw 2 was happening, and so, but this is also happening. So you're like losing track of, and this person is actually working for this person. It gets very confusing.
It's like Primer without the time travel.
Well, I feel like kinda. To me, it's like Law and Order meets 24 is how it feels to me. And there's like a very soap opera tone to it.
Yeah, like I said, I definitely got that cop show vibe from it. I just felt like I was watching some weird combination of torture porn and a CBS procedural show.
And the other big difference,
CBS procedural show then.
Yeah. That's true. I don't know what to do. Yeah, I guess it was just an episode of Criminal Minds, really. But
the other big difference is the first 3 movies, Saw's motivation is pretty. He's not that sympathetic in the first 3 films. Like he becomes a little bit more humanized by the 3rd movie, I would say. But his actual motivation is he's not like going after horrible people and you're rooting for them to die. By part 4, they shift so that he's kind of selecting people that you want to die. And it's not just that he's going after people who aren't, valuing their own life enough. It's that they've done something horrible and they need to pay a price. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, that is something I'll say that at least they do right in these movies I watched. It would be really easy to just make these all, these make them terrible people. Kind of the Tales from the Crypt thing they sometimes go overboard with, where it's just, well, everyone deserves to die in this anyway, and so it doesn't really work as horror. Yeah. But it's pretty ambiguous in that respect.
Now, what did you think of his whole? And we'll get onto Saw 2 and 3 too. But I'm just interested. What did you think of his whole thing? Do you know what I mean?
The philosophy of Jigsaw. Yeah. It's pretty condescending if you get right down to it. Oh, you're not valuing your life enough. Well, who are you to judge that, you freak? If you're strapping people into death devices, I think that one of us has a lot more reason to judge than the other.
Yeah, it doesn't really hold up at all for me.
No, it makes sense
well,
if you
not do
think
you
of him as a
agree with
villainous
it, just
character.
as a villain's motivation. What do you think?
Sure, it makes perfect sense as a villain
Well,
motivation. I like intelligent philosophical villains
I like
personally. So
I do like philosophical villains, but I kind of feel that you're boring and you don't do much doesn't give you the most colorful victims necessarily. But of course, they find ways around that. The second one, well, they just throw a bunch of criminals in because they're the ones he's really going after the cop. And because the thing is, he doesn't even really stick to it. It's like, well, the cop, he's going after the cop because he beats people up and frames them. But what's that got to do with
But also,
but he filled a house with people that he thought deserved to die that this cop arrested. So the cop's doing something right, admittedly.
Yeah, I know.
But here's the thing.
It just the more you think about it, it's like.
I think what he was actually saying to that cop is he was going after the cop because he wasn't framing people anymore and he wasn't beating people, because he was saying, you're not the cop you used to be. You're not the medal winning. Do you know what I'm saying?
But then again, see, because the way the cop could win the game was to have not beat him up. If he hadn't beat him up, he still would have been talking to Jigsaw when the safe opened.
That's true.
And his son would have come.
True.
So that the game was set up for him to be punished if he beat Jigsaw up. Once he beats Jigsaw, oh, okay, I'll take you.
Yeah, that's fair.
And
that's
so
fair.
Yeah.
The second one's my favorite out of all of them. I actually quite enjoyed the third one. But.
It took me a second at the end where I was like, wait, that didn't make sense. Oh, wait, no, it clicked together. And I was like, yeah. The second, I think, was my favorite of the three.
What I liked about the second one was how they brought this character from the first movie and expanded on her.
Yeah.
And
the
cool. Surprise ending. I thought that all really worked.
But,
yeah, it kind of deflated in the third one, unfortunately.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, I was about to say they totally ruined that character in the third one for me, and it made it hard to like that movie.
Well, it's a very bold series in that regard. Its main antagonist is dying and is no physical threat to anyone, and they kill him and they keep going for a long time.
Yeah,
they ruin and. Every time they set up an easy, this will be the new Jigsaw, they ruin them. And you're just left wondering well, who the hell's the new Jigsaw in the next movie? And they keep it fresh. That takes some balls to do it that way.
Yeah. I actually like the third movie. I mean, the first one I think is the best movie, but the third movie is kind of my personal favorite in terms of where the characters go and the kinds of dialogue the characters are having.
There's a lot of interesting things about the third one. I kind of, it's interesting what they were doing, but I just felt Amanda was just so incoherent in this movie. It's like, because I mean, okay, it's like, well, she in the first two, it's like, okay, yeah, it made sense. She worshiped Jigsaw because he's the one who changed her life. But now we find out retroactively she never believed in his theory, and she was killing all the people all along. But why was she following him if she didn't believe his theory and she thought nobody could ever? I don't know. Just everything about it just did not make sense to me.
I think, on the one hand, I think you're right. The this one does undermine the character they kind of established at the end of the second movie, where you're like, wow, she's now the disciple who's going to carry out his will. And there's that sort of lost by them going this direction with the character. On the other hand, because of her history being an addict and having these issues and
having her be unstable in some way, or screwing up and him testing her and ultimately killing her because she failed the test, that I'm fine with. Just the way they did it, I just felt like this. Yeah, I feel like they could have done the same basic idea and had her personality make sense, but it just.
So for me, the third movie is, in terms of her character, I was okay with how they. And again, I guess it depends on, because watching it's a little bit hard to follow all the threads. So I feel like I might be missing a detail here, and I could be wrong.
Yeah, I could be too.
But I felt like her whole thing is she has a weird relationship with Jigsaw, and so a lot of her issues that are coming out because of that weird relationship, and she clearly is in seemingly in love with him or something like that is going on.
Well,
and so she's acting out.
It's all over the place though, because I would have been okay if like she'd lost her faith in Jigsaw there at the end, and that's why she was doing things. But pushing it all the way back to the first movie that she was, killing these people she was supposed to be. I'm like, that's what ruins it for me, because that means
I get what you're saying.
she was, even in the second movie when we saw her, she wasn't the loyal disciple. She was already the person that didn't
I see.
Even as but there was the back casting of it that really ruins it, basically.
My interpretation of her trajectory is that what made her decide to start killing people was because of how everything happened with Donnie Wahlberg's character, where he got out of the room and he attacked her and he said she wasn't Jigsaw. I thought that was the scene that caused her to go in that direction. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
But hadn't she already killed the other guy with the plastic bag? But
that was a mercy killing. That was I think that was a mercy killing. I don't think, because that was, and again, I do agree with you. It's confused. It's not, because I didn't notice it until the second viewing. But when that scene happens, he says her weakness is her emotions, and when she goes in there, her emotion with Adam is complete sympathy for his situation, right? Where she's distraught.
You might be right about that. Yeah, I get what you're saying there.
But so we're actually seeing a more slow decline over, and it's just like not really presented in a linear way.
Yeah, it's not presented in a linear way, and so and again, I could be wrong, because the timelines in this movie are so confusing that I might be missing something that happens before both of those things or something. Because of the way they. But
I thought about chronologically. I think it makes more sense. It's just not presented chronologically, so it's kind of.
But Adam, the thing that I wanted to mention to you that I thought you would find interesting is that in I forget which movie. I think the fifth movie or the fourth or the sixth, they add in a new detail that completely changes the reason why she goes apeshit at the end of the third movie. And so there's a whole other reason on top of everything else that so the movie kind of does it's continually doing this to itself, where it says, it adds in a character or adds in a motivation and then projects it back. And you kind of just have to roll with it. But I could see how that would be off-putting especially because I do agree that the ending of the second movie was, I thought, really compelling. It was like, oh, this is an interesting.
Fantastic. I love that they kill their guy at the end of that movie, and they sort of revive him for the third movie, but I don't think he's around for the fourth movie. I think he actually dies in the third one. I think permanently, doesn't he? Even for the rest of the series.
Yeah, no, that's why I was so intrigued. That's why when I said I remembered the final scene at the end of part 3, and I didn't know that it was part 3. I just knew it was a Saw movie. But I remember that scene, and I remember thinking, wait, they just killed off their main character. You know what I mean? And he was doing something really interesting when they killed him off. So, yeah, at the end of the third movie, he gets killed by Jeff, and again, I think that the setup to how Jeff and that lady were married, I thought was really clever, how they kind of arranged for all that.
Yeah.
But in the fourth movie, he literally gets rolled into the morgue. That's and he doesn't come back as an undead. I thought they were going to pull a Friday the 13th. They'd be like, well, we have no choice. We have to make him a zombie now because we killed him. But they.
His twin brother arrives.
Yeah, his twin
ready
brother
for vengeance.
But no, they do something a lot more creative and interesting with it, and that's really bold. It's one of the reasons I respect the franchise much more than just the individual movies that comprise it. Yeah, because they kept doing that.
Even where I've got complaints or things it's definitely a franchise where they're trying to be creative here. They're willing to take risks. There's no question. But
yeah. And I think that risk makes it compelling. It makes you want to watch the next movie. Well, what the hell is going to happen?
What the hell are
ranking these movies personally, because I think that we all kind of have our favorite here. Yeah. I think I'm in the majority when I say the first one is probably the best, most coherent movie. I personally like the second movie the best. I love the note it ends on. I love my favorite scene in all these three movies is the one where the cop goes in and starts beating the hell out of Jigsaw, and it's clear that Jigsaw's plan is in no danger at any point, and he's completely got the upper hand, even though he's just a fragile, easily murderable old man. and it's the composure of the actor that really sells it. It's Bell's performance where he's just like, yeah, you can keep beating me up. This does hurt and suck, but you're still gonna lose.
Yeah, well, exactly. As I mentioned earlier, that's how he loses. If he hadn't beat, all he had to do was not beat Jigsaw up, and he would have been fine, and he would have gotten his son back. But
don't flip your shit, bro.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's my favorite. It's the crowning jewel scene for me because it perfectly contrasts just how non-threatening Jigsaw is physically and how unbelievably dangerous he is intellectually.
Yeah,
that makes for a really compelling villain. And it's something I've stolen for a lot of my role-playing game villains, where like they'll have a plan, and Ozymandias and Watchmen does this too. It's not like it's unique to him. Hannibal Lecter does in Silence of the Lambs. There's a lot of movies where this happens. The guy in Seven does it, of course. But Jigsaw does it consistently, and Bell's performance is so fantastic that like that's kind of what I want to steal. And I love doing that. I love villains whose plan is already well on the way to success by the time the heroes kick in the door to confront them. And they're like, well, you can kill me, but you're still gonna lose. I love that.
Yeah, he's definitely a chess playing villain.
Yeah.
But you said you were going to rank the movies. What's your ranking for the three movies?
My ranking as far as personal favorites actually is the third one at the bottom, even though I really enjoyed it. For me, it's 2, 1, 3. In ranks of how much I enjoyed it. In ranks that I respect them, it's probably 1, 3, 2. I know that sounds weird, but 3 was actually pretty brilliantly written. Like you said, the little rug pull at the end where the husband and wife get together, and that was like all a part of Jigsaw's master plan, but also there was another different master plan, and then there was a master plan that was like the master plan. That's such a fun scene. And the fact the whole movie builds towards it and is still an incredibly cool, interesting Saw movie that keeps you guessing to the end with lots of really great gruesome kills and wonderful performances, like, yeah, that's really respectable. And it doesn't really get equaled again, I don't think. The first one does that really well. The third one does that really well. The second one, I think, is a little bit too... I think the cast of characters is a little weaker that we stay with for the most part.
I think there's too many characters in the second
one.
Yeah, they're really... It's like that. You don't get attached to anybody in that movie aside from the cops.
Yeah, I don't remember who they are. Alone, but it really leans hard on that one thug guy with the nail bat. Like, that guy is like the villain of the movie, and he's like not that great of a character, and then he dies, and then it's over, and you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, except when I talk about there, everyone's like an extra from a cop show. He's like the cop show extra thug who shows up and waves his bat around. And
he's very mid 2000s dude, bro, too.
Oh
it's very. I don't want to diminish the performance of the actor, but the character was not very well put together.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, it's hard to say when someone's got a role like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he sold that role really well. It was really intimidating and intense. Like, so he did it, but like the role itself sucked.
It's boring.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he served the purpose, I guess, in that scene. But I agree with you. He's not. He wasn't as. Well, you know what it is. So my ranking, just before I forget, is 1, 3, 2. So definitely, I would start. The first one I think was the best one. 3 is probably my personal favorite, but I would definitely put it as the number 2 slot, and then 2 after that. The first movie is 2 characters essentially. There are other characters, but 2 characters are the focus, and then you suddenly have this full, huge cast of characters. You're not even sure who you're focusing on.
It gets the second one immediately does that, and it becomes much more difficult. The third one tightens it down again, which is nice.
Yeah,
But maybe that's a good thing because it does make them all. Like if they had not done that, maybe 1, 2, and 3 would all have felt too similar. And by having the second one deviate in that way, it's kind of easy to track the different movies.
It took a risk, and like it made the movie distinct. That one stands out in my mind as like the ensemble movie. I think 4 goes back to that, but as far as the first 3, that's the ensemble one to me.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely an ensemble cast. And Adam, what's your ranking?
I'm honestly not sure. I mean, I just watched all 3 of them, so it's kind of tricky to.
Still gestating.
Yeah, I really don't have an order yet at this point.
That's fair.
Well, what are some of your favorite scenes? That's kind of that's the real question we're asking here.
yeah, let's see. Well, we've already talked about the end of 3. That was good. And the endings of both 3 and 2 both really stick with me. Those are very impressive. Man,
how'd you feel about Jigsaw being the dead guy on the ground in the first one?
Oh yeah, that was a good reveal there, definitely.
Yeah, I like that in the third one. I like that they answered a lot of the criticism that they got back from that movie, where they had him inject something that made him not twitch or move or almost breathe at all. Like, okay, no, all right. They actually went back and they answered that, so that was neat.
Yeah, I always like that when you see there's a line in something that the writers are just covering their butt. They're just like, all right, I don't want to get crap for this. But let's see. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we've already talked about all the scenes that really came up in my mind there. But
what about the most what scenes bothered you the most in terms of the torture?
What was the fingernail cutting scene?
Well, it's really the needle scene was one that bothered me the most.
I mean, that was
my watermark for that one.
Yeah, did Amanda get hepatitis or anything from that?
Yeah, it seems weird that she was in on it since she's the one who went in the pit.
Well, if they wanted to find a reason for her to lose her faith in Jigsaw and something, it's like maybe get
me in the hypodermic pit. Jigsaw threw me in the pit.
Well, the second movie, while it's really fun, I mean, his plan, a lot of the elements of his plan are really, really, really iffy. I mean, it's like, okay, well, the kid is smaller, which means theoretically you'd think he'd be the first one to die of gas, but there's a lot of.
He probably gave that kid an antidote for it.
Rigged. Well, would he rig this up?
Also, I will say this: Jigsaw is precise enough that he's the kind of guy that probably injected them with took their body weights into account when he gave them their dose of the nerve agent.
Wait, wasn't it coming through the vents though?
I don't know if it was coming through the vents or if they were dosed up. Was it coming through the vents?
Yeah, it was coming through the vents, but I'm willing to bet he probably dosed all of them with enough that they would die at around the same time, enough of something that would mitigate it. I'm fine with that.
I'm just nitpicking at this point. It's not the kind of movie where you really need to worry too much about it anyway. But
the magic wand of these movies is Jigsaw's a genius.
Exactly.
He took everything into account somehow, impossibly.
Yeah, and all of your concerns, Adam, all of your criticisms would get amplified tremendously as the series goes on.
It's not even really bothering me. It's just where we've got to keep talking about the movies. So
Jigsaw might be a genius, but the screenwriters weren't. So
well, it's one of those things. I mean,
there are huge flaws in the design of some of these scenarios. They all require things falling into place exactly. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, even in the first movie, there's a lot of coincidence and comedy of errors elements that make it a lot scarier of a trap for the people involved and works to Jigsaw's favor. That he can't chalk that up to genius. That just happened to happen. Jigsaw is the world's luckiest serial killer.
But for me, I agree. The needle trap. That's one that one really stuck with me. I remember.
Did it now?
It's one of the things that
with you.
It wasn't intended, but yeah, that's one of the things I remembered going in. The other one is that fucking skull drilling sequence.
In the third one.
I had to look away. I could not watch the skull drilling sequence.
Well, they show you the bone of his skull and they drill into it and there's all the blood welling up. It's a real medical procedure.
That didn't actually bother me as much because it was so medical. It did feel like watching a medical documentary as opposed to watching someone be tortured or something. So it was like, okay. And it was Jigsaw. I don't really care too much if he's in pain.
Well, the third one had some nasty ones, like that pig thing where the guy was
Oh my God.
Well, that was gross, but that I could handle. It was the skull really bothered me.
Skull bothered you. I could see that one.
The skull one was definitely up there.
What were some other ones that got to me? There was a lot. I mean, like this movie.
What was the one with the guy with the eyeball? The guy that had to.
Oh yeah, like the key behind his eye.
Yeah,
I don't know. That
got me.
I didn't get the logic of that one so much. I'm like, so wait, you already got it back there without destroying his eye, so theoretically, so can he. I mean, like, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I'm sure. Yeah, by that too.
Well, actually, they in a weird. I think Saw 7 kind of explains how they managed to do that. Not adequately, but. In fact, you probably will be angry at the explanation if you want me to tell you, Adam. But
yeah, no, anger us. We deserve it.
Yeah.
So it turns out by part 7 that Cary Elwes has survived, and that he's actually Saw's #1 disciple. And so all of the medical stuff that we see happening over the course of the movies is mostly performed by Cary Elwes.
Okay. No idea.
He's even the one that selects the doctor that's in the 3rd movie.
Interesting.
Because she's got the chutzpah to operate on a brain.
Yeah.
I guess she's really talented, or I don't know.
That whole scene with the trepanation was so wonderfully intense. I really liked that scene.
Yeah,
I was amazed. Like, they did a good job of making it medically convincing.
Yeah. It was very well done.
I mean, I was squirming in my seat watching that scene. That scene was like you posted about Robin Williams today. I saw on Facebook. I was becoming Robin Williams watching that. Like, I was just moving in my seat and like I was just making weird faces because I was so uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a good squirm moment. So, and this is a franchise that prides itself on its squirm moments. So, best squirm moment per movie, go. I think Trepanation in movie 3 is probably the best squirm moment. Needle Pits 2. What's the best squirm moment in the first?
Oh, it's got to be the sawing off of the leg. That's like that's the money shot of the whole movie.
#1, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's the one it's coming too. So
yeah, they built up a good sense of dread with that one. I agree.
Yeah, and the acting really sells that one when they're doing the cuts back and forth and the screaming and begging and just. The intensity of Elwes' performance in that one is really, really good.
Yeah.
There's a funny clip on YouTube called "How Saw Should Have Ended," which plays around with, that scene that I recommend people watch. But
to check it out. I like the How It Should Have Ended things. Those are really fun.
Yeah, it's How Saw Should Have Ended, and it's basically like the other guy, Adam, saying, "Oh wait, what if your family is like okay now? Like maybe you don't need to saw off your foot at all." And,
oh right, I was about to do something really stupid and irreversible.
But yeah, that scene. I guess in that other, were there any other scenes that were really rough? I mean, the bear trap thing was pretty difficult to watch, even though it didn't go off on her.
Yeah, the dread in that one was really good. I liked that scene a lot. Let me see. The pig trap in the 3rd one got to me. What else? Because there was a lot of nasty deaths in that movie. Let me see. Because in the first one there was
the guy with the chains who gets
that was rough.
To rip the chains out.
That was pretty intense. That you can kind of feel the prosthetic element of that one because a lot of them are just kind of like on obvious like squibs that are like
exactly.
Yeah, so that kind of reduced it for me, unfortunately.
The effects on that. I was just throwing out particular scenes because I agree. It was the dread of that was bigger for me than when it actually started happening, and I'm like, oh
yeah, the dread of that was really good. Like the one on his jaw was when I was like, what are you?
Yeah.
Really? Some of these would kill you if you tried to do them. Like no amount of wanting to live is going to keep you from the shock of like losing your jaw. You're going to lose consciousness and bleed to death. Yeah. Like that's just how it works. I'm sorry, Jigsaw. I can't want to live more than physical reality will allow me to.
Yeah, some of them were pretty inexplicable, I think. But
when you realize they're supposed to be flawed, they make a little more sense.
Yeah, I was about to say I just chalked that up to maybe it was like, oh, maybe Amanda did that because she just doesn't want them to survive.
Well, and that guy wasn't supposed to survive that one, right? Because the door was
welded shut. Yeah. So it's like she took double precautions to make sure he wouldn't survive.
But I think that generally I think that the less you see in the Saw movies, the more effective the scares are, in my opinion. As the series goes on, the scares become like the graphicness of it becomes kind of the point. Like again, I like I said, I was watching the Final Destination movies, and it's a similar type of thing where it's just sort of like it sort of has to constantly one up itself. One thing I wanted to point out, something that bothered me about part 3 was Jeff is like the slowest Saw contestant in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
Dude, he sucks.
Yeah,
I agree.
It was really annoying waiting for him to be late with every one of those tests that he was going through. So that, like, you know, like, except for the judge, I think the judge was the only one that he successfully.
It was effectively the same beat a couple of times. It's like, okay, he's just going to hesitate. Then he'll belatedly think, oh, I'm going to survive, so help this person, and then go get the key. And so, yeah, it's essentially kind of a repetition of the same situation.
I think Jigsaw probably should have factored in a little more time for introspection per each challenge.
Jigsaw did not give people enough time. Like 60 seconds to find like a, you know, to do whatever it is you got to do in the room before you can, you know, the killer trap.
The first one wasn't quite so rushed. You know, like he gave you like hours to contemplate your fate, you know?
Oh, no, I know, but I'm saying there were some that were like, you have 60 seconds to do 60 whatever. 60
seconds to blah, blah. Yeah. I like to think those are all her, where she's like, I don't have any patience. I just want them to die.
That's a good point.
I don't know. I feel like at that point, though, like, what was she even doing? You know, she could have shot him. Like, what? She wants them to die. There's a way more expedient way than spending, like, days or weeks building an elaborate trap.
That's my feeling. It's like, why was she, if she'd been disillusioned with Jigsaw for so long, why was she still working with him? I don't get it.
Yeah, it's more of it's a mystery for us as the audience, but it doesn't actually make sense for the characters to act like that.
Yeah.
You
know?
My sense was she's like divided inside, was kind of how I viewed it.
Or like she just isn't very good at her job. She's just incompetent.
Well, no, I think she's like loyal but disloyal. Do you know what I mean? Like there's like she was
like
sort of
loyal,
on the fence.
But yeah.
I think they could have done that in a much better way though, if that was
Well, because it's not like Jigsaw wouldn't know. Like if she was doing it to mollify him, he knew the door was welded shut.
Yeah.
Like there's no way he wasn't looking at her welding that shut, which takes hours of work, and be like, why are you welding it shut? Oh no, this is part of the game. Yeah. Like he knows. He's a super genius. Of course he knows you're welding a door shut.
It's also possible that maybe she was doing that thinking that she's doing it in her own way and it's not going to be that big of a deal that she's taking, you know, like he might get upset, but he might not, you know, get super upset. You know, I don't know. You know, but
yeah, her motivation, like the more I think about it, like actually think about it, I think Adam's right. I think in that third one they should have been, and maybe they didn't have time. I was looking at the little pop-ups. I was watching that on Amazon and all the pop-ups, and it's like a lot of the climatic scenes were written on napkins moments before they were shot.
Okay,
like they were like boom, boom.
That's one of the reasons why. One of the reasons why I was saying it has kind of a 24 feel is because it does feel like now this is happening and you have to accept it. Like that's kind of yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of a early 2000s, mid 2000s kind of thing to do. Like, you know, 24 was popular back then too. That's just like kind of the style of putting things together. And it's not like it's been literal years. I watched that movie a long time ago and I'm watching it again recently. I watched it again today, actually, before I went to bed. Because I have the night job, so I sleep during the day. And it took me until this conversation before I thought about it critically and to be like, hey, wait a minute. So clearly they outsmarted me, is what I'm saying. I've been thoroughly bamboozled.
And, you know, and again, I think it's her character also is so messed up that it's like, I think maybe they're thinking she's so chaotic that they can kind of
still. I feel like she's just unstable as a cop. It's like, I don't know, when you're making a story, it's like characters have to make more sense than real people in a way.
Yeah,
it's like I could buy in real life someone just being that ridiculous and nonsensical, but when you're watching a movie, I have higher expectations than reality.
Okay. Yeah, so. And that's a good point. As a real actual person, makes sense. Like I could see it as a fictional character. How dare you not be consistent?
Real people don't often make sense. Do you know what I mean? Some people do things you never get an explanation.
It's very anomalous to get a satisfying explanation from somebody's actual motivations.
I don't think they were trying to make her more real. Like I don't think
no,
that's the goal.
It was fuck up. But I mean, we could read it. We can read it charitably.
Yeah, there's a lot to like about the movie aside from that. It's just that's one reason it bugs me, because it is just kind of this flaw in the movie. It's like if they just tweaked your motivation a little bit and made it make a little more sense, it would have been just absolutely perfect there.
It only gets worse from here on out in terms of characters making sense.
Fair enough. I'm willing to bet.
Well, one thing I
can
will
deal
say,
with that. I can deal with that as long as I. I mean, it's not
I will say this in its defense.
Yeah.
They at least plan most of these things in advance to some degree, even if they don't execute it well all the time. So so the stuff that comes after this is it's at least like, even like you see him in this movie pour wax on the tape.
Yeah, I saw that.
That is for the next movie. Do you know what I mean? He's gonna swallow that, and then that's what's gonna be in his stomach at the beginning of Saw 4. And so and that's how they're able to have him continue his game from the grave.
From beyond the grave. Yeah. Could you imagine, like, knowing that you're dying of a brain tumor and being like, okay, I got a lot of shit to take care of in the next month, and just like furiously scribbling all these notes and getting all these things moving, like, okay, hope this works. My throat dying.
I can't imagine.
I hope I've got that much energy when I'm dying of cancer. That's.
I mean, if I get the flu, like, all of my tasks go out the window. So,
I know.
This guy is organized, is what I'm saying.
He's a very motivated person. I think that's one thing they do establish about him. He's motivated. He embraces living life as fully as he possibly can. So
he's
I guess
a high functioning cancer patient.
Yeah.
This guy's got that Sigma grind set. Another neologism. I'm gonna keep whipping them out at you.
Something we were talking about his motivations before, and my feeling on that is, I like the idea behind it of, this is a character who his motivation is he's kind of angry at people because he's suffering this physical ailment, and other people that don't appreciate what they have. Like, I think if you've ever been sick, that's a common sentiment. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I do get that. Yeah.
What doesn't make sense to me is that somebody who wasn't a serial killer suddenly becomes one midway in, like a midlife crisis sort of a thing.
He always has that cop out where it's like, I'm not really killing anyone. It's like, well, yeah, you are though.
No, but what I mean is,
if someone took you to trial, these would all be murders, all of them. These would all be homicides.
I just have trouble believing that he would suddenly become a killer after. Like, I could see that having that experience shape the killing that he's already doing, but it doesn't make sense to me that you were not a killer before and now you're a murderer on a, like at the serial level of murdering.
Like I said too, it just a lot of these just don't line up with his philosophy anyway. A lot of these killings that he does, it's like, they're just, I don't know. I just find
and it's such a nebulous thing. You could justify doing this to anyone, and he's like, "Oh, you're missing some vital part of yourself." Like, you have a unique and horrible trap that you are going to torture them to death with. That's everyone has that kind of like Green Beret energy. And I like in the third movie where his disciple points that out, where it's like, your cop didn't learn shit. He's just a hard ass. He broke his own foot and got the fuck out and went on the warpath because he's like a soldier and a cop. Like, he's built for that shit. Like, these game series aren't going to teach everybody a valuable lesson. Sorry, you're wrong. Like, and she's the rightest person in the movie. As screwed up as her character is, she makes the philosophical rebuttal to him that actually is correct, which is, you're wrong. You're not teaching anyone to value life. You're just mutilating them. Well, yay. You'll always appreciate life now. Now I'm going to appreciate dedicating a small portion of my life to finding you and kicking your ass. Like, I don't have a foot, you son of a bitch. I'm going to take my stump leg and shove it where the sun don't shine. Like, everyone in life has gone through, almost everyone I know has went through something agonizing physically or emotionally or both. And like, sometimes it just leaves you miserable and scarred. A lot of the people he tortures are already scarred from having to deal with life, and he's just going to mutilate them more. Way to go, jackass.
Well, I think I think going through something can be like a shock treatment. It can also it can give you a new perspective and all that. I don't think torturing and traumatizing people is likely to, do you know what I mean? The only one where it even made any sense was with her character, because she was a drug addict and you could kind of see the thread. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it would happen, but you could see the thread. But for it just doesn't seem like it would work. And also, like, the way that I look at his characters, I think that's fine, because he's a character who's in denial about what he's doing. Like, I'm not a murderer. I've never actually murdered anybody. So the denial thing is fine. What I'm not fine with is he's suddenly killing people at age 50 when he never was before. That seems weird to me.
Well, I get that. I think they build it up enough, because not only does he go through the terminal cancer, he also tries to kill himself, and it doesn't work. And it's the moment when he's pulling himself out of the flaming wreckage of his car, where he's like, even though I'm dying, I'm willing to sacrifice so much for just one more second of life. Like, that's his moment when he kind of flips.
No, and here's the thing. In terms of realism, that stuff wouldn't work. But in terms of a really interesting, super villain.
I mean, you're overlooking a really basic physical fact here. He has a brain tumor. His behavior is going to change.
That's actually a good argument. That's a good argument.
Thank you.
I think it's good this movie is willing to tell us who the real monsters are. It's people with tumors in their brain. Yes.
Yeah, round them up and kill them. That's the movie's outlook. You know what? Exactly. It's got a point.
Well, what's interesting about the movies is it has developed this, one of the things that you used to hear from people if they were trying to get you to watch Saw is, no, he's actually like not a bad guy. He's got like a, especially, and it's like, no, that's, how do you?
You only watch Breaking Bad, go, Walter White, he's got the right idea.
Walter White, I like the cut of his jib.
But like, very clearly, the movies are not telling you that he's doing the right thing. The movies just get more ridiculous as they go on, and he gets more sympathetic.
He's got to be internally consistent and persuasive, and he is those two things. Like, you gotta give him that. He sticks to his philosophical guns.
He's a great villain. I wasn't saying he's a bad villain. I just found it weird that he suddenly became a serial killer.
Well, I think that we were. Yeah. Oh, thank you, darling. I think that it's fine. I think that we in the mid 2000s didn't quite have the the people that were watching these movies, which was mostly me and my idiot friends. We weren't the brightest group. So yeah, I could see that, like, that apocryphal thing, like, oh, Jigsaw's he's actually genius. He's actually doing good stuff. No, you idiots. He's not. You're dumb.
It's just something that I've heard a lot from people, dude. It's just one of those things where, like, no, actually, Jigsaw, blah, blah, blah. Which I think if you're looking at the later movies, I could sort of see where you may be getting that. But even in those, he's still doing bad things to people. So he's not even doing it anymore.
Strap somebody to an acid sprayer machine and be like, "This is for your own good." Yeah. Like, no.
But yeah, so my one other comment is, like, Jigsaw really should not be mixing his hobby and his healthcare like he does in part 3. Like, getting brain surgery at the peak of one of your games just seems like a bad idea. Because that has to go so perfectly for everything to go right. Do you know what I mean? Like.
Yeah, I was getting the timing right, where it's like, okay, I've got like 5 hours to live, so I'm going to spend a month setting up this game so it takes place at the point where I've only got a few hours left, and everyone's really in the right place for that. That's
just almost like an air traffic controller or something at his day job. Like, his timing is so perfect.
Well, he's like an engineer type. Do you know what I mean? He reminds me of a guy that, like, I knew when I did Taekwondo, who was like I forget what he was. He was one of these people that was like Jigsaw, where it's just like he's very good at, like, the hard sciences and black and white thinking and logic and all this stuff, and he just has that kind of a vibe. But the other thing too is that the later movies are I mean, you guys might disagree, but I don't know. Like, let me know what you think. But I feel like the first 3 movies are fairly serious. I mean, there's humor in them, but they're fairly serious movies. And I feel by the time you get to like 4 through 7, it's presented in a serious way, but it's becoming self-parody, and half the fun is kind of the humor of how ridiculous some of the stuff is getting.
Well, I think that whenever Jigsaw actually croaks, some element of the kills croak with him, because the work is carried on after and his plans go on, but he's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's to some
extent. But he's still in the movies. He's still in the movies, though, up until the only one he's not in is Spiral.
And Tobin Bell kept getting work, but he was in flashbacks after that point, or as a corpse.
But that's what's so interesting about this. Is one of the reasons why I like the franchise is they kill him in 3, and then it's like, okay, but we still have to have this character somehow. So they have to keep building on that whole idea of recontextualizing previous parts of the movie with flashbacks, and and he has to have disciples that are able to carry on his work. But there still needs to be an explanation for why there are tapes with his voice on it, telling people, "I want to play a game," and they managed to pull that off. It's ridiculous and corny, but it's entertaining in the way that the Friday the 13th movies were entertaining, I think.
Yeah, well, once you've gotten to your 3rd sequel, I think that you have to adopt a different, you can't keep using the same formula. It'll get stale, you have to do something new. And I think that they found a new that worked for them and was consistently entertaining. Yeah. Good on them.
They also did find another villain to keep, he's obviously the villain in those movies, but they found another character to function as the villain for half of those later movies. Which I think also helped carry them. But
a lot of these movies too. I mean, as someone that watched slasher films in the 80s, like you said, I mean, half the time you're watching those movies, it's with a group of friends on video, on TV, and everyone's talking except for something's happening. Hey, check this scene out.
That's one of the things people don't get about when people are overly critical of horror movies. I don't think people always understand that horror movies know what they're doing, and they know what their audience is doing, and the audience is sometimes there to say, hey, did you just see that, or look how ridiculous that, there's that, there's a conversation going on between the people watching the movie with this again, especially when you're getting into the later Saw films. I think it's that style of film where
And the further you are in the Saw franchise, the more hardcore the fans are that are watching it,
That makes
the more
sense
into the
too.
continuity they are. So the film's begun to become more for the fans as it goes on. That's why you get your Freddy versus Jasons and your Hellraiser 5s and what have you. You get to the point where the really select audience you're making them for.
I had to drop out of Friday the 13th when he went to space. That was my limit on Friday the 13th. Maybe I missed out on a great movie because I've heard people.
That's a fun one. It is. It's a fun one. It's not because, and at that point, we're so deep into the Friday the 13th franchise that it's just clown shoes.
I mean, I love Part 6 is my favorite Friday the 13th. So I mean, they were making good ones, I think. Friday the 13th Part 6.
If you watch the Hellraiser movie in space, or you got a general thing where people go to space,
where space is the line.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I have no opposition. I mean, I love space horror movies. It's just
when established characters go into horror characters go into space, does Pinhead going into space bother you?
Yeah, I think that would bother me too.
It would only bother me if he did a rap. My name is Pinhead, and I'm here to say, don't play with my box, or I'll. Oh wait, I can't rhyme. I can't rap. Sorry,
I had trouble with them sending Jason to Manhattan. That was a little.
That was too far.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So
New York,
I was still on board, but it was getting pretty rough. And then it's okay, now he's going to hell, and then it just kind of got more and more ridiculous from there for me.
Fair enough.
Also, I think that the production team had changed by that point too, so the movies also changed.
So did the Leprechaun ever go into space? I forget what that franchise ended up doing.
He went to the Hood.
I know.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was his big
He
thing.
went to the Hood, bro.
Okay. I just had a vague sense there might have been a Leprechaun in space movie.
I want to see the Spike Lee Leprechaun movie. You know, like, give it to him. He knows what to do with it.
Somebody should make like a really serious, high quality, Oscar-nominated version of the Leprechaun movies and see what happens.
And just straight up call it Leprechaun 4 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, they stay in continuity. They keep everything, and they just make it this Oscar-worthy masterpiece.
It's going to be like totally authentic Celtic mythology. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's heavily researched. It's got like really, Warwick Davis is in it, but he's got like an ensemble cast of like top-notch actors. They bring in like a really high-quality scriptwriter. They throw billions of dollars at it.
Yeah, that'd be rad. So
this is how I would spend my money if I had like.
I think studios agree with you. A lot of modern horror movies are kind of like that. Like what was that? The Witch and all those movies, Midsummer. Like those were really high budget, like big studio movies. So like. There's a genre of like really artsy horror,
but that's different. That's an art house direction. I'm saying like a, more like a broader appeal, but just very high quality. You know what I mean? Yeah,
kind of like Gremlins quality.
No, like enough to win an award, but not that it would alienate a mass audience. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I got you.
So it'll be surprising to everybody that a Leprechaun movie is like the #1 movie in the land, and you know what I mean?
I don't know. We're gonna
critics and audiences both adore it. That kind of a movie.
That should be our segue into the critical versus audience reactions to. That's the perfect segue, dude. I've been waiting for it, but that's the one.
I completely forgot.
So yeah, the big thing, like obviously Joel mentioning that Saw was not as bloody as I thought was one of the reasons why we did this. Another was I was looking at the audience scores on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's a real like the divide between audience and critics on this movie is astounding. So Saw 1, audience score is 84%, and the critic score is 50%, which is a pretty big gap. It's also interesting that the 50% basically means the critics were split on it. So that's kind of interesting too.
Well, that's the most generous one for critics, as I recall, that first one.
Yeah.
The Splat reviews I saw from the critics on those, one of them in particular stuck out to me where he was like, they could have kept it in the room and made this a horror version of Waiting for Godot. And I wanted to put that guy in a Saw trap.
Because that's what Saw fans want is waiting for
Godot.
is
waiting for Godot. Not everything can be judged by that metric, you fart sniffer.
What's also funny is it still did manage to get that kind of a feel. Like for a horror movie, it's really trusting its audience to stick with these two characters stuck in this room. Like it's a very no exit type of sort of setup, right? And so I think it I don't know. I think that he's kind of sneering at the fact that like it kind of does that. Like it's not the movie that he wants, but
it's not a stage play.
Yeah, but it is a movie that's very concentrated in one location. And there are other locations, but it's not like those are the focus the way that this one, you feel like you're spending most of your time in that one room, I think.
Yeah, that was the criticism that stuck out to me. What's the second one's Rotten Tomatoes score?
So the second one is 37% for critics and 59% for the audience, and I think that's the one that maybe the
that's the lowest audience one too.
Yeah, that is the lowest. That's technically not fresh. It's got a spilt over green popcorn container, whatever that means. And so in Saw 3, the audience score is 71% and the critic score is 30%. So the critics have totally bottomed out at this point. They are not interested in Saw. And so I'm fearful to see what Saw 4 might be on their score. I think one of the later ones they actually kind of got a slightly higher score at some point, but for the most part they're pretty low. But I think it's pretty indicative of just the that's kind of like the story of horror in general, right? Horror has always kind of been this genre that is.
It is. The reason I bring up the whole comparison to Waiting for Godot is because I want to make it clear that a lot of the reason that these are rated low by like serious film critics is because they have such rigid standards and they're not interested in actually judging these things as the audience would judge them. They don't look at the same criteria. They don't derive entertainment from them in the same way. And like that's a huge failing of criticism if it can't even look at something in genre and say what is good about this within its own genre.
Another issue is just the fact it's like a critic is someone that's paid to watch every single movie, and the audience is people to go out and see a movie they think they will like. So it's inevitable that you're going to get lower scores with critics.
No, that's true. But horror has always kind of been like the whipping boy of like of the critics. I think there's reasons for that. Like I think obviously film critics, they come from like a background in like, something like film studies or whatever, and horror definitely goes right up into all of the lines that film studies people don't like. Do you know what I mean? And not in terms of craft, but in terms of like potential messaging and imagery and all this stuff.
Well,
and so I think that
there's a cathartic nihilism in horror. There's an audience facing sadism in it. And I think critics think of that as a moral failing on the part of the creation of the film.
That's exactly what I think it is.
One thing that critics tend to hate too is movies that are very deliberate in getting a reaction out of you, and horror often falls into that category. Not always, but it often does. It's critics will complain about manipulation. It's like, well, sometimes I do want a movie to manipulate me. I want it to make me laugh or just scare the crap out of me. It's like I don't need everything to be ambiguous and thoughtful. So.
Well, that's because critics will sometimes complain about sentimentality in movies too, and like sometimes I like sentimentality. It kind of gives you an emotion.
It's like what the fuck are you watching movies for if you don't want to feel feelings, you jackass?
Well, I think it's probably a much deeper issue, but I just think in terms of the horror, I think you hit it on the head with it's the sadism, it's the feeling that there isn't a good moral argument being made by the movie itself. I think a lot of times they're misunderstanding what the movie is trying to do.
That's the thing. When I talk about Saw from an intellectual standpoint, you get into philosophy and all of that. Yeah, the whole thing just falls apart. So it's like it is just a completely wrong way to approach this movie. That's not what it's really trying to do, like you say.
And so and I think also the
well,
there's a generation. Saw was at a generational divide too, because like even I felt affronted.
Yeah, you guys totally missed it. These movies rock. So, shut up.
So I think that it was a new style. It was the beginning of torture porn, right? So like it's
because this was very quickly followed by things like Hostel, which were way more grotesque. And you can kind of tell that by the third movie, Hostel's been out for a while. And so they're having to do the trepanation scene, and like we're gonna have to make them squirm. We got competition. We got what was that movie? The Human Centipede. Like that was I don't know if that was at this point, but it was like on the horizon. So like the competition was getting very stiff.
And honestly, these kind of movies are not really like I said, I'm not huge into films like this. I've seen some of them, I've seen some of the Saw movies. I liked Wolf Creek, even though that I thought was really uncomfortable to watch. I had no interest in seeing Human Centipede. I have to I heard about it. I didn't understand the appeal of it at all. No. And I think that's kind of, to me, that was sort of the fruition of the torture porn genre.
That was its final, most misshapen child.
So I can appreciate why people don't like it, but I have to say, I think the Saw series is actually a really it's a really entertaining series overall, and it's not nearly as gross as as it might seem.
It knows how to trigger you. I'll say that about it. It knows how to get under your skin. And I'm really happy there's a ton of sequels to it, because it means we can kind of put this in the same category as like your Friday the 13th and Halloween.
Oh yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street. It's like we now have another wonderful long-running horror series that we can put on the shelf next to those giant like VHS box collections. There's something wonderful about that, and that's a pretty unique element to horror. There's not a lot of other genres that make like these huge, like 9 sequel long bricks of consistent.
And they did like one a year for a while too. So
yeah,
like
man, they cranked them
every
out.
year.
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3 were one year after another. I kind of looked that up. I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, and that kept going. So it's like Jesus, like every year you have one coming out. So we should probably end it here because it's like 2 a.m. I think, and we.
Yep, you guys get to sleep. I get to work.
Yeah, so you have to get to work. What do you?
Yeah.
You work
I work
now?
after the. I am a night worker now.
Oh, okay, all right.
So you guys enjoy your rest, you clowns.
So we'll end it here, and I don't know what we're doing next time. I know that we have some stuff that we were talking about doing. I know that a Del Toro project was mentioned.
Oh yeah, I don't think that's till September or something anyway.
Oh, okay. Or
October actually. That's coming out near Halloween.
Ooh, October would be a good time.
So it's not even out yet. It's something that's coming out.
It's on a streaming service in October. There will be a Del Toro anthology series. So
okay,
that it would be interesting to do.
I was thinking.
I'm still gonna. Oh, go ahead.
The Conjuring might be an interesting movie to go to after this one because
maybe.
Because
I remember liking The Conjuring, so
it's.
We don't have to do it if you don't.
I'd rather do it than not. Like, I don't remember liking it, but it might be fun to hate something. I remember our discussion on Sleepwalkers was a lot of fun as a result. I'm still gonna keep stumping for Twin Peaks, like making you sit down and watch that entire series, then the sequel series and the movie. I'm gonna make you do it.
Killing my soul, making me.
You want to watch Twin Peaks. You want to sit there, hear the backwards talking dwarf drink coffee. You want that. You need that.
So
force in a spotlight, man.
We will we will resume this discussion next time. And
Darman Hosea.
And until then, we will talk to you later.